Okay, so basic breakdown and modification of a standard shotgun, which is a great platform to use as far as I'm concerned for any other weapon. Um, they're pretty universal. Most of the components that you see in here, if not all of them, will be found in pretty much every other firearm in existence. Some here, some there, but it's all the same thing. So what I'm going to do first of all is, this being a Harrington and Richardson 20 gauge partner pump protector, I'm going to discuss these magazine extensions. Usually the Remingtons are the ones that fit well. The threads are very unique on these though, so what I've heard and seen a lot of people do is grind down the threads on these extensions, and that absolutely works, and you can get it to fit and lock tight, and it'll even hold as a shelf piece. But once you start using it, cycling and heaven forbid even firing it, there's nothing really holding that on except that one thread. So first thing to understand is that this clamp is here to hold the magazine extension in place. It does not hold the barrel in place, and the barrel can come flying off if all you do is secure it forward. You also have to secure it to the rear. This is basically just a barrel clamp, and this is a quad rail clamp, and this holds that barrel on, and it does a very good job of it. So I'm going to go ahead and break this down and get it to factory specs. Now you will need a few tools for these: 12mm socket, ratchet, extension. You'll need a pair of pliers, a pair of needle nose pliers, and a screwdriver. So now they include these hex wrenches. Now you can buy your own set and everything, but these are included with a lot of these accessories. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off this magazine extension. This may be sort of a boring video. There's going to be a lot of silence and pauses while I'm working on this. Just try to bear with me. It is educational and safety oriented. So make your brain feel better. And when you do this, take it off slow, because you'll have a spring in there and it'll go flying. Take the spring out. There's your spring. And go ahead and push the follower out of the magazine tube. So now you're clear. And as you can see, I've already removed the stock on this. So now we're going to remove this quad rail clamp with another hex wrench. There's 2 screws in here. Which this one also had 2 screws. Just, you loosen them up. Not rocket science, not even close. The main thing is, rather than getting caught up in every specific detail with this, is to understand the sort of primer, the algorithm behind all of this stuff. Like, if you understand one weapon, you may not know everything about the other weapon. For example, a knife is a little bit different than a sword, but they're both sharp blades. So if you learn how to use one, you could probably figure out another. Now, in the absence of proper tutelage, you may not be as good with said platform as someone who has studied with an experienced instructor who knows that particular platform like the back of their own hand. Like, for example, a lot of collie guys, you know, they know the knife inside and out. Not necessarily so good with the sword. Whereas, for example, Shaolin monks tend to be very good with the sword. They don't use a knife quite so much. But they can manage, you know, because they have enough training in similar concepts to where they can carry that knowledge forward. Well, that's sort of the purpose behind what I'm doing here. Not, you know, I'm not going to have 50 weapons on the table. I mean, that's one weapon. Understand this. You should be able to carry this knowledge forward. So now that this end cap is off the magazine tube, this barrel is free to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull the fore handle back, and this is actually called a slide tube. It's not the fore handle. This is the fore handle and the slide tube that's inside of that. And there's a little locking ring which holds that in place. But I'm going to go ahead and pull the carrier bolt all the way to the rear, and just see how I did that. I just, you know, press the release, and simple. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull the barrel off. So now it breaks it down to the essential magazine tube and chamber of the weapon. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and bring the bolt forward, bring the carrier bolt forward. And there are 2 pins, one on each side of this carrier bolt, and you can feel them when you place your fingers in. So you want to sort of get a feel for this. And when you can feel it, and you sort of jimmy this back and forth, they will come out. And when they do so, be sort of careful with them. I mean, they're not incredibly fragile or anything, but you always want to take care with this stuff. A lot of people imagine working on cars where it's like wham, whoo, you know. No, it's a very delicate process. So there's the slide tube, and here's the carrier bolt and the firing pin. So when they come apart, we'll just go ahead and place those off to the side. So it's just about broken down to essentially a solid piece of metal, just about. One thing left is this trigger group here. And this is all one piece. And there are 2 pins that hold this in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and punch those out. I'll just use a hex wrench. And see that just pop. Boop. Now this other one's a little bit tighter, so I'm going to go ahead and take the butt end of my pliers here and use that to hammer, because I just want to give it a little tap. It's not something that requires a lot of stress. It just requires sort of a patience about it. And if you're not getting enough torque that way, go ahead and turn it around. That's why I like using these, because they give you various lengths, and now it's coming out. It's starting to come out there. So I was tapping it like this. Now I'm going to tap it like that because I want a little bit more length. Just little taps. Patience and temperament are the best muscle when it comes to working with any sort of machined tools, be it automotive or aircraft or weapons or whatever. See, a little bit of time and patience, and that's still hung in there. This second one's a little tight, so I'm just going to go ahead and give it another little tap. Hold it. Boop, 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 boop. Very gently done. So now this trigger group will pull right out. And this is essentially a hunk of metal now. That's all it is. And this is all one modular piece. Now this does break down further. For example, if you have, you know, a Sig Sauer P380, you'll get something like this, which is really nice. If not, it will be broken up into various pieces. And you can further break this down. There are springs in here that can be pulled, sort of like a, you know, revolver trigger set can be broken down. But we don't need to do that. And really, a lot of times if these break, you can't even find the parts. You can just find this, and which this is the original, of course. Nothing I've purchased is broken. But these are the original factory trigger pins, and that's all they do is just slide in. And they sort of hug it like, they hug these trigger group fastener ports, holes, whatever you want to call them, tomato. They hug them sort of like pegs, as opposed to, you know, screws that torque down. They do sort of work like wooden pegs to where they just fit in just right to where they hug it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set this up to a factory configuration. Like when I just get this out of the box, what's it going to look like? Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the slide tube back on the factory floor handle. And I'm just going to go ahead and toss it right in there like that. And it fits right in real snug. And so, and then I take this locking ring, and it has 2 notches on it. And I'm going to keep these notches up, just drop it in there. And I'm going to take a pair of needle nose pliers, or let's see if I have something else that will work. No, it's just, you know, in any case, if you have a solid tool that will work on that, those are even better. But if not, needle nose pliers work rather decent. Really, you can sort of slide it in with the torque that's under your God-given wrenches. Sorry, I have a shitty sense of humor. Until it starts to get to the point to where there is too much torque and you're not going to be getting any further with it. And we're getting close. It saves you a lot of time, and, you know, prevents you from causing any unnecessary damage and scratching things up. I mean, it turns with, yeah, and now it's starting to tighten up. It turns with, you know, as much pressure that's under your fingers, and there we go. Now it's tight, and that's always the best way to handle this is, you know, with delicacy. And there is no tool that will provide more delicacy than your own hands. You start messing with anything, whether it's a hand tool or a power tool, you are adding the probability and risk of not only, you know, either, you know, minor damage, you know, dings and scratches that don't really affect the mechanical, to, you know, mechanical damage to physical injury. So you always want to take your time with this stuff, and, you know, never get excited and carried away, even though it is, you know, when you're first doing something, you know, and, you know, people out there who are veterans with messing with this kind of stuff, I mean, they're just like, but, you know, for people who aren't, you know, especially a lot of martial artists who, you know, scoff at guns entirely, but, you know, sort of changed things lately to where they're a little bit more interested and they'd like to know more about them. These kind of tips are very helpful. So now that I have it, you know, back to factory, I'm going to take my carrier bolt and firing pin, carrier bolt, whatever, and of course, you know, the pin goes forward, and it's just slide right in there, and that's not a problem. And we're basically going to just reverse the process that we just did. It will sort of tuck right in there, and when you do that, you have these 2 pins. You hit one on the side here, Jimmy it a little bit. That one on the side here. It may take a second. It is sort of a tight fit, and there it goes. Missed it. It's not really hard to do, you just have to hit it just right. Now, come on now. Don't be like that. Because I'm on camera, that's why it's giving me a problem. Well, it's in there. Why is it giving me attitude? Because it's giving me attitude, bro. I swear I do this all the time. It's like, click. Get on camera and I'm wasting battery. Do I have... Well, that would explain it. My retarded butt has this on backwards. I'm stupid. That is supposed to be backwards. At least I didn't shoot myself. I'm not even going to start over. Yeah, because this bolt hook here is what grabs the shell. So forgive me for a moment of idiocy. Now it should slide right in. There it goes. Well, it should. See, it's still not cooperating, so it isn't my fault. It's the gun's fault. There we go. Alright, now that that's on, we're going to go ahead and put the barrel on. So, the trigger group isn't in yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and get the barrel back on. Slide that back in. Now we're going to take the follower and just boop, drop that down the hole. The bullet goes in the hole. And you put the, I'm going to go with the factory spring this time, because I'm going to set this up to factory specs. And this is the factory end cap. And you're ready to kill Nazis. So it's pretty self-explanatory, pretty neat. Anyway, so, and so we are missing a choke, and you don't want to mess up your threads on this. So this is a cylinder bore choke, flush choke, which means it does not protrude out past the end of the barrel, which I've already cleaned this, so I'm not going to go over that because it's just, you know, tossing like that. You know, it's more time wasted, but you get some bore cleaner and some gun oil and you're good to go. So, and then use your that there choke wrench. Give me one for a 12 gauge, I guess. Oh, there it goes. It's still in. So now we have a smooth bore choke on there, and this is opened up as wide as it can be. It's cylinder bore. Now, what we're going to do we're going to take this there bolt and that there washer and this here factory buttstock and this here spacer. And we're going to put this there bolt and that there buttstock. See, people always think I'm a simple country boy. I tell them, you don't know, y'all don't know me. Okay, spacer goes right here. Never make fun of a redneck. You never know when they're a genius. Met some pretty smart mechanics in my time. I met some really stupid ones too. So I have this on my foot. Hopefully it's unloaded, right? Which we know it is. So, socket. I have a wobbler extension here. I still need to find the rest of my tools. And you just tighten it by hand. Usually people would have put the trigger groove back on by now. I sort of forgot that. It doesn't actually matter. In fact, it's probably safer that way because, you know, if that's the last thing you put on, you know for a fact this gun ain't going off. It just isn't. Of course, it's unloaded, so it doesn't matter anyway. So anyway, you can see the follower. Now, one thing we have to do here is take the shock pad, shock absorption pad, I'm not going to mess with it because I use the same screws on there, but anyway, that goes on the end, and there are 2 screws there. Another thing I'm not going to mess with is this is tapped for rails, so you can put, for example, you know, if you go deer hunting, you can go ahead and put this scope on, and that's a good deer hunting setup. So I'm going to take the trigger group, slide it back in ever so carefully. Now let me guess, I probably shouldn't have put the buttstock back on first. But you know what, that's not a problem. I'm okay with that. Are you there, God? Maybe it is a problem. No, it's not. I figured. So, still goes back in. Now these holes need to be lined up. And a lot of times what you can do is, if you can't get it by hand, you can use your hex wrenches to line them up. And I do believe it goes in this way. Yep, you pop in like that. Turn that around. Tap, tap, tap. Now we have the factory shotgun, minus the shock pad, of course. So, which I don't want to mess with pulling the screws out of the aftermarket one. So, not bad. 1, 2, just to make sure it is clear. So, you can never overcycle these things. So, safety on, safety on. That goes up, that goes down. Club goes up, club goes down. And it's ready to rock and roll. Okay. And as I said, you know, it is tapped. You know, if your shotgun doesn't have these, you can tap your own. You can take it to a gunsmith, or you can go with one of these accessory rails, which you don't actually have to machine this out for. But in such a case, you know, that's a pretty sweet deer hunter setup right there. Generally you go with copper sabos for that. But let's go ahead, those are 3-inch shells. 76 millimeter. These are 2 3/4 inch, 70 millimeter. They are specifically 70 millimeter, whereas a lot of the other shells, they may be a little bit longer. So, let's see how many fit. No. Those. Trace. Quattro. Cinco. 6. We can fit 6 in there. Which ain't too bad. So you're only going to be able to fit 5 of these. You aren't doing 6 of those. But the shorter shells, when they're manufactured right, you can do 6. So let's go ahead and cycle this out. All right. Not trying to be tack pro about it, just try and clear the magazine, man. So, alright. Now from here we want to make some changes. We want this back on, because we want to be able to fit 8 of those. And 7 of these. So, what we're going to do is go ahead and bring the carrier bolt back. Unscrew the magazine end cap carefully. And just toss that to the side because we're done with it. Bring the barrel off. Follow her out. Now I've just decided that I don't like this anymore. I want a handle. I want an actual 4 handle rather than a cosmetic slide tube cover. So we're going to repeat that process of pulling the pins, and hopefully this time I learned my lesson, right? Yeah. Captain Stupid screwed up on camera. Alright. So now we're going to take apart what we just put together. Life is so pointless. What's the meaning of it all? And we're going to unscrew this. Let's put some lemon juice on it. Is that stain getting on your nerves? Just fucking kill it. Are your neighbors bothering you? Well, move, you stupid piece of shit. And that's true wherever you go. So, now we're going to repeat this process. Put on the aftermarket model. And this has been slightly modified to allow for this. I did have to grind some of it out. Most shotguns you don't have to do, H&R is sort of an off-brand. So sometimes it can be hard to find parts for them. But really, in a lot of ways, you know, myself being somewhat new to guns, you know, I didn't grow up around them. My dad never owned one. Never saw him touch a drop of alcohol in his life, for that matter. I mean, it just wasn't the sort of culture I was raised in. And I never bought a weapon, you know, a shotgun or any other firearm until, you know, a little under a year ago. So, you know, having chosen this particular model for various reasons, you know, price, accessibility, you know, when I needed it, who I needed it for, you know, she needing some sort of security when I was not around. You know, at first when I parted ways with said person, I was a little bit disappointed that I had chosen this, but I mean, you should never get carried away over something like that, because after, you know, just a little bit of research, you know, and time spent, you know, you can take something, anything. You know, what you need is a Honda Civic. I mean, they make them with lift kits and four-wheel drive, or you can get one with a 386 and a blower. I mean, you can do just about anything to anything. So never let somebody tell you that because you decided to purchase a certain name or whatever. I mean, if you know what you're doing, if you have a brain in your head and you can use your hands with a certain amount of dexterity, you can do a lot with very little. So, the iPhone. Glock is the iPhone of the gun world. No, it's a Honda Civic. So you can't do anything with Apple. If you want to do something, you either get Android or you get Microsoft. Because Apple is just not doing anything with it. What you get is what you get. There's very little you can do with it. There's very little that's available for it. Alright, so now I'm back down to this. And I have that spacer in there. I thought it was sort of a compliment to say they were sort of the Chevy 350, but they are kind of a Honda Civic. I mean, they're good. I mean, Honda Civic's a decent car. It really is. And you can do just about anything to it if you have the time and the patience. But I think SIG actually kind of beat them out with that modular trigger group. I mean, that is nice. You know, to have that the way it is on here, I mean, that saves a lot of time. So now I have this bolt. Well, I'm going to put that off to the side for now, because I do want to go with a tactical setup. You know, I want this handle, okay? But I also want this handle. And I'm not interested in hunting for deer. Let's say I'm interested in home defense if somebody breaks into my house. Well, in that case, I want a mil-dot sight. So, I'll take my carrier bolt, firing pin, put them on correctly this time. Which I can't believe I made that mistake, but I did. Oh well. I'll go ahead and see how long this takes me this time. It really isn't a problem. I mean, once you figure out where those notches are, it should still give me a problem. So this is the biggest pain in the butt about getting it back together. But it's in. So faster that time. So we're ready to go there. We have mechanical action, we have the trigger in. Now what I'm going to do is place the barrel back on, and I'm going to leave this choke in for this particular setup. It's always easier when you pull the bolt back. You can do it with the bolt forward, just it's a little easier this way. And pull the bolt forward. Well, I think I'll leave it like that because I'll wait until I get this back on. So, what I'm going to do now is take my follower, drop it back in, and this time I am going to use the aftermarket spring because I'm going to be adding some length to my magazine tube, so this is just not going to cut it. It's not going to give enough pressurized torque to allow this to cycle properly. And as you can see, it is on there. It is absolutely on there. But I would not trust it. You know, if you get a magazine extension and it's specifically designed for that gun and it screws right on, you're good. But this is all that holds. Yeah, this is all that stands between you and your gun flying apart once you pull the trigger. That's it. So when you do something like this, you have to think about that. And you have to think about, not only do you want this held in tightly, you want the barrel held in tightly, and it's going to be held in from behind. So we're going to take our quad rail clamp. Okay. We're going to go ahead and attach that. Just good. Hand tighten these bolts. And take the X wrench or Allen wrench, whatever you want to call it. Tomato. It's a thing. You put the thing in the chamber, you pull back on the lever, and the bullet goes in the hole, and you're ready to kill Nazis. And just throw copper. Bitches. It comes in a paper bag with Nazis on it. So, now I want to resist. But I probably won't. And then take this barrel clamp here. And slide that back on. It's right in place. And then go ahead and hand tighten that as well. Just until it's snug. And with these, you really want to, you know, whenever you're tightening this down, you never want to just torque down on one and then go to the other. You can do a little bit each side and then do the final tighten on either side. When you have a 4-bolt pattern, you go crisscross. You know, the way the Mac Dad makes you want to jump around. You 4-bolt pattern like this. Get that out. Think. You go side to side. A diagonal motion. And then that way it torques evenly. And now we've got our extension-y thingy thing. And good pressure on the follower. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and pop this handle on. So push down on the strap, loop, unscrew. Unscrew the end cap, and then I just have a couple washers and a bolt here. pick this up at the hardware store. On the cheap. And we have an adapter. We're going to use this because otherwise it's not going to fit. So we're going to take this spatial adapter, Captain Picard, to prevent any temporal distortions. And we will remove our extension-y. Go and place our socket on our wrenchy wrench. Make sure it's righty tight. Do a little hand torque here. Go ahead and take the wrenchy wrench off the socket. Make sure it's tight with my handy hand. Kids don't grow up to be like me. Alright. Now, I'm ready to walk an egg wall. So, screw that back on. Put our loopy-loop back in. These just have these 4 compression pins. Probably tighten that down a little bit, which I'll do that. I kind of like that though, because it gives me the option of, left-handed. I think I may leave that just a little loose. Anyway. Tack Pro. But I'm still not happy. And I'll tell you why I'm not happy. Because I have another clamp here that has a strap loop on it. So, I also have a little bit of space. And I'm going to use that space efficiently. And that will give me greater security over this questionable magazine extension. And it is questionable, and you don't ever want it to be questionable. You wish to make it unquestionable. Because when you got one thread holding that on it, it's not going to take much. You put a round through, as soon as that, this all happens in a tenth of a second too. As soon as that magazine extension comes off, the barrel's going to come off, and the whole gun's going to fly apart. And not only are you going to destroy your gun, you might either seriously injure yourself or someone else, or kill yourself. And that is not fun. If you're going to do that, you don't need to be messing with this. Make triple sure, quadruple sure you are doing things safely before you even open up with this thing. Think about what you're doing. There are all kinds of modifications you can do. This is just one example of some of the, well, basically all of the modifications I have on this gun. But there are any number of modifications you can do. They're not infinite, and that's why I'm hoping this will give people, yeah, I've seen all sorts of accidents. Some of people who are just, they're not educated enough to even use a factory gun, but a lot of times with people who have modified their weaponry, and they don't think about that. So not only do I have this holding the barrel on, I have this holding it on as well. That barrel is not going anywhere. It flat out isn't. It is held on there. And that magazine tube extension isn't going anywhere either. It's in. So I do need to tighten this down now because I don't know, I really don't like it. So I'll pull that off. I can see that loosening up over time. So I didn't really torque it hard. Didn't care to. So in that case, put on, and again, you have to have the rails, which I'm not going to mess with them. And that gives you a nice tactical shotgun. Now I'm going to finish this off with the quad rail, and I just don't like that. I do not like that, Sam. I am. So I'm going to undo that real quick. Like I said, this may be a little boring. It may be a slightly boring video, but it should be informative. End up staring at the wall most of the time, or my face. I got these loosened. I'm doing one at a time. A little bit here, and it should slide right off. That. Take the spring. I'm just going to leave the follower in there. Bring the bolt back. Let's go ahead and undo the stupid crap we just did. But it is important to cover that point, and that's why there are two clamps there. Just in case one's not enough, two doesn't hurt. You got room for it, go for it. But you should always keep safety in mind. Not just when you're using a weapon like this, but also more than anything when you're modifying it. Because what you're doing was not prescribed by the manufacturer in any way, shape, or form. When you modify a car, that's it, man. You've expired your warranty. They do not cover that. Oh, you put, a supercharger on here. It didn't come with that. And you blew the motor in the transmission, you say? That's not our problem. Because it isn't their problem. They sold you a car. They gave you a warranty based on the factory specs. And if you decide to take the car outside of that warranty, that's either your problem or you are wise to wait until that warranty expires and then modify it. A lot of times people offer warranties on modified vehicles, but if you're the kind of person who can do all that stuff yourself, you don't mess with relying on bureaucracy to fix all your problems. You just don't. Same with this. I mean, if you're the kind of person who can do this, then you don't care how much someone spent on something comparable. And in fact, that tends to look a little silly to you. It's like, well, I spent less and I got the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing because, mine has a name brand that's different from yours. Okay, there are differences between manufacturers, granted. They're very subtle. Sometimes it can be, artisanship, maybe the materials they use, But I mean, you know, a pump shotgun's a pump shotgun. It just is. They look the same. They work the same. There may be minor differences from one to the other, but it's the same thing. And, you know, for example, if you wanted to get a rifled barrel, those are available as well. But I do want to tighten this up because I'm not happy with that. I just don't like it. I don't like when things are sort of sloppy. It's not my way of doing stuff. And I'm sorry to have you endure this, but you know, even something stupid like me putting the bolt carrier in backwards, you know, look out for that. You know, when you're doing stuff like this, you know, that you may think you have this tight and it feels tight and you get it on and oh, well, I'm not gonna, well, you know, then maybe over time this ring will come loose. See, now it's pretty darn tight. And when it does that, you know, let's say you are in a life or death situation, you grab it, you know, somebody breaks into your house and you pull the bolt back and the thing slides loose and you're like, what's going on? Well, that split second can be all it takes. You know, people are arguing about whether you should carry concealed with one in the chamber or not. I mean, it's going to take you a lot less time to cycle around than it is to figure out what went wrong with a complex build like this in a dead heat scenario. So, better you take the time when you're in the shop than on the track. My professor always said, before you hit the track and go burning down the drag strip, maybe kill yourself, destroy your car, kill someone else, whatever, make sure it works in the shop. Make sure you've driven it, you know, on the road, in traffic, slowly, and maybe even giving it a little bit of gas on the highway. Alright, so now that thing's tight, and I like that. So now we're going to add the quad rail and the heat shield. And we're also going to add another clamp towards the end of it for additional security. So I had 2 clamps on either side, either way, and I'm just trying to save a little bit of time here, yet at the same time explain everything as best I can. Pull this a little bit forward because it is a little off center. Now this is an interesting build, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I get it together. It's like everything fits together like just so. It's super, super precise. And to where if you don't put it together just right, you're not getting it together. And you have to take it apart just right as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take the aftermarket spring. And I should have the follower still in there. Let me check. Yeah, it's still in there. Take the aftermarket spring. Pop that down there. Turn it that way because I do have this sort of a bend. I'm going to put this barrel clamp back on. Right around. Yeah, because this doesn't go on either way. It has to go on the right way. Probably didn't loosen enough. comes off easy, but it's not going to go back on quite so easy. There it is. That lower wrench and that lower hex bolt. Allen bolt, it's not a hex bolt. Hex bolt has the protruding heads versus the recessed hex heads. I call them Allen bolts, Allen wrenches, whatever. So, getting there. And that's solid. Okay, so now we want a quad rail clamp on. Of course, I got mine at a discount because I'm real cheap, so it doesn't necessarily, like, the rail doesn't necessarily line up with the clamp like it should, but I use the heat shield to secure it and it's not going anywhere. So when you're fabricating your own stuff, you know, and it's not, you know, it's not aftermarket designed specifically for your gun, but it will fit if you kick the little bastard into place, then you have to know just how to kick it, you know, just right. And there we go. And, you know, sometimes it can be an accessory. In this case, the heat shield does serve to not necessarily hold the quad rail in place, but it keeps it stable, you know, to where there's not any sort of give, you know, so it doesn't have any additional motion. And this is the really important clamp, of course, so we want to make sure this one is incredibly tight. Give it a nice torque. This is the one that matters. This is the one that's carrying most of the load. So, there we go. Now I want to take that choke out because I'm just not happy with it. It's not playing nice with me, and it's insulting me. And kind of like that gong. You know. That gong's always picking on me. So I got it loose. And there she comes. Like this one better. So we're going to get to that in a minute. What I want to do next is put this clamp back on. It has the strap loop, because once I get this quad rail on, there's no messing with anything essentially behind that clamp there. I mean, it's covered. You're not getting to it. And then, you know, it sort of helps to hold everything in place. It's like I said, this is sort of a systemic build, and it goes together in such a manner that once it's all together, it has sort of an emergent integrity to where everything holds everything else together, and that makes it an incredibly strong build. So I'm pretty satisfied with the final product. And when you're doing this, you should look for that sort of, you know, when I get done, is it at least as strong, you know, the overall integrity, is it at least as strong as it was when I got it from the factory? And if it's at least that strong, you're good. If it's stronger, that's even better. So I'm going to give this a twist. 2 snaps up, a twist, and a kiss. From Hot Topic. Now it's tight. Now that thing is on there. So now I have 2 points of control holding that in, and that is very, very good. So now we're going to look at the quad rail. Now the quad rail is held on essentially by the trigger group pins. That's really what holds it in place. And moving forward, there are these 2 screw holes here, bolt holes. They're supposed to slide or screw into this quad rail clamp that really hold it into place. Like I said, I got this at a discount because I'm cheap like that. This, like I may have it lined up right now where, no, it just covers it. It's not going to work. I keep trying, but no, it ain't going to fit. So what I'm going to do is pull these trigger pins out. And I don't have to remove the trigger group. This way. Walk this way. Got smaller ones. A tighter fit. Smaller pegs tend to be a little bit tighter fit, and that's really the one that is sort of a pain in the butt to change out. But you just have some patience with it. Maybe a lot of patience. Maybe more than is actually required because the little son of a bitch won't come out. Pushing it this way. There it goes. There it goes. Alright, always make sure to keep track of everything. Now these should come with longer pins, about 3-inch pins. Mine, they sent me the wrong ones, so what I did is I took a couple factory pins and cut them down, cut them in half. So, take the heat shield here, and this has a couple bolts that go on the end. And normally you put these on with, well no you don't, you put it on with them. But anyway, it usually comes out to about where the locking ring is on the barrel. About yaw. But I'm going to put mine towards the tip of the barrel just because I think it looks cooler. And also, you know, with the quad rail covering it, it's, you know, it's supposed to not only act as a heat sink but keep you from burning yourself. So this has to go on, and it basically just slaps right into place. And I use the bead sight to kind of hold it on, which just seems to work fine. And just give it a little tap with your hand to get it to fit on correctly. Yeah, it's because of all these clamps that I have that I had to expand it outward. But I think not only does that look a little nicer, it also, like I said, it serves its purpose that way. Whereas, you know, if I were to hide it behind the quad rail, not so much. Now, I'm not really necessarily worried about it sticking in place right now, but yeah, as you can see, there's that gap there. But that doesn't matter because the quad rail is going to cover that up. And so now I'm going to go ahead and slide the quad rail on. And I'm actually going to be pulling this heat shield up a tad. So I definitely don't even need to worry about it being secured right now because I have another clamp I'm going to be adding. So until it's lined up. And it comes with these spacers. And so what I'm going to do is take one of these pins, the larger one, because those are easier to get in. So this will be with the larger rear pin. And I'm going to get one of those spacers in position and secure the rear end of this quad rail. Pretty sure it's lined up. Come on, sweetheart, get in there. Give it a little tap. Yep, that's in all right. Now that's just going to hold it there while I do the other side. What I'm actually going to do is probably carry that all the way through, because these have to be put in a certain fashion. These pins don't seem to hold right. There's a certain prescription for all of this stuff. Like you put the pins in a certain way and they behave themselves. I may be able to, see, that just fits right in there perfect. I'm going to go ahead and give that a tap. Yeah, it didn't want to go in. So what I'm going to do is get this smaller one through first. This is my first time putting these on, so this may take a second. Freaking things, you want to hold its ground now. And there's the spacer. This way, because they have to go in from one side only. They can't go in from both sides, which is kind of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is. There we go. That fit in really nice. Now we're going to do the smaller pinch here. So because they have to go in this way, what I'm doing is I'm putting the cut side up. If you have to do this, if you have a single pin, you just throw them in, but they have to go in this way. They can come out the other way, but they have to go in this way. So I'm going to make sure that spacer's lined up. And looks like it is. Trigger group's lined up. There it is, because the pin's going through. This one's really tight. And give me a second, because I want to make sure this is done accurately. Pop it on there. Now we're going to go first shot through. Alright. Darn. These are going to be a really tight fit, which is good. That is incredibly tight. By George, I think we got it. Yeah, it's in there. It's like Prego, man. Yeah, that's solid. That's much better than what was on there before. I mean, that thing ain't moving. That's absolutely solid, so I'm pretty happy with that. Make sure they're even. They are. That's pretty sweet. Okay, so now we have this heat shield, which has not been secured yet. And there's a reason it hasn't been secured. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up a tad, just to where there's space in the barrel, between the barrel and the magazine tube. And I'm going to go ahead and slide this final clamp on. So now we have a 4-point bolt system here. Coming down to the end of this. So, we need 3 pieces to this clamp. I'm going to go ahead and add the bottom one first. And I'm not going to tighten it all the way, especially because I just dropped 1 screw. That's going to prevent me from doing it anyway. I just want to get it a little snug. There it is. Turning into a long video, hour and 15 minutes plus. I promise I will never make another one. After watching this, I mean, if you need to know anything else about it, watch this again. Probably another 10 minutes will be finished up. I don't want to go home. I know. Kind of a boring lesson today. That should be informative. Informative is good. Alright. So now, we're going to go ahead and secure the heat shield. Make sure it's positioned properly. There. I can't see. There. These don't require a lot of tension. I mean, it's just aluminum, so you're just going to bend the crap out of it. You really just need to snug them just so you don't need to be torqued down super tight like a retaining clamp or anything like that. Heat shield is a non-critical component. I don't even need an Allen wrench. I can just put pressure on the bolt and tighten them by hand. And that gives me about all I need. And it's on there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put the top of this clamp on, which it has 3 rails on it. I'm going to loosen this up a tad. Like I said, I just wanted to hold it on there. It's not actually going to be secured until you get all 3 pieces together. And you want to put the pressure on the barrel itself, so you tighten down the barrel side of the clamp first, and once that's in place, then you go ahead and give it, you know, snugging torque. You know, whether that magazine extension is factory tight or not, you don't want to be putting any unnecessary lateral torque on it. Get this Allen wrench out and make it easier. It's sort of hard to get your fingers into, so you just do a spin. Still being a pain in the ass. Yeah, it is. The tolerances on this are very small, and that actually, you know, that's a good thing. I mean, when you get it together and the tolerances are that close, you know it's going to hold. You know, at the end of the day, when you're dealing with millimeters and microns, and everything snugs in just so, that's what's called precision engineering. And this isn't exactly precision engineering, but for, you know, handcrafting, unless you put it on wrong. Did I put it on wrong? Yeah. Did I put it on wrong, Bob? No, it's on right. I just need a little bit more room. Try not to drop these screws. Good thing I don't have monetary turned on YouTube. Nobody would click on this crap ever again. I don't care. Monetary or pluses or dislikes or whatever. People who want to watch this will watch it. People who don't, whatever. Do it for money. And now we've got grip. And that's what we want. That is exactly what we're looking for. So go ahead and give them a spin. Just about there. Alright. So a little bit there. A little bit there. A little bit there. Maybe we can tighten a little bit more. There. A little bit there. Alright. So down to the wire with this. Actually, I'll loosen this up a little bit. So I want to make sure that it doesn't put any unnecessary stress on that magazine extension. So it doesn't have to be, you know, incredibly super tight, but you should give it a good torque on the barrel, because that barrel is held in place and extends all the way to the chamber, trigger group, all that stuff. where is this extension? Stops the locking ring. A good little torque. Make some happy little trees and awesome little clouds. Now it's on there. And so we just need to go ahead and tighten this. And it doesn't need to be super tight. It does not need to be super tight. Maybe about half the torque we just put into the top end of it. And remember to do the crisscross pattern and jump around. And then jump up, and get down. So, give it that. And a little bit for you. Just about done. It's pretty snug. Not bad. So now we have a pretty mean looking little home defense weapon right here. You talking to me? I don't see anyone else here because it looks like you're talking. I don't see anyone else here. You talking to me? Are you talking to me? So yeah, it's not too bad. Not too bad, Tony. All right. I'm such a retarded smartass. Okay. Get all this organized. Now, I've just decided that I don't like this anymore. I'm going to go hunt deer, but I'm going to do it at night. So, and, you know, I really want to play Medal of Honor when I go out and hunt those deer. I mean, I want to feel like I'm not shooting Bambi, I'm shooting the Taliban. So, we're going to do one last configuration here. And this is called the when you are fed up with everyone and everything's bullshit configuration. Everything from squirrels to deer to elk to caribou to lions to tigers to bears to elephants. Oh my. You want to be able to nail anything in the field. You want to be able to do it up close, you want to be able to do it at range, whatever. This is the I am sick of your bullshit configuration. And you're not going to win. Whatever you want to call it. It's pretty cool though. You end up with a night scope, torch, laser, which I'm actually going to be taking these off. I'm looking at an IR illuminator with a laser and torch built in. Crud. We're going to go ahead and take our little adapter here, bolt adapter. We are going to add this puppy. So now we have a pistol grip. And now the NRA totally supports our right to own an AR-15 or whatever. But, you know, it just goes to show how cosmetic all of this really is. And people say, and there's this recent debate, you know, over the quote-unquote assault rifles, and it's like, well, you know, and Rubio gets up there and he says, well, you do realize there are still X number of guns that are used for hunting that can put out the same amount of rounds, the same ammunition. So you're going to start with the assault rifles and then get to the rest of those, right? And it's like, no, you know, no. What's your problem, dude? Well, my problem is, your problem is that you really don't seem to understand what's going on here. Yeah, well, I sympathize with those people. You know, how short-sighted can you be? What they're essentially creating, and there are many, many examples. You know, modern day Iran is a great one. Soviet Russia, Nazi Germany, Egypt, Rome. The one I like to use is feudal Japan, however, because, I mean, that's essentially what they're talking about doing, is where, you know, authority figures like samurai are allowed to have whatever they want and do whatever they want without question, because they have a patch, and you, the morons, are just supposed to accept that that's the way things are. Well, no, that's the way you're making them. You know, what are you sending your kids to school for? Are they learning history? You know, pardon my French, but what the fuck? Do we even need to have this debate? I mean, it gets a little annoying after a while. It's like, well, you know, you just don't know. I understand perfectly what went on there. Talk to Sheriff Israel. Get to know some of those cops. They do not care. They don't care at all. And just, you know, ban the weapons. Well, I'm glad it did finally come out. You know, what's really been going on. Because this is, you know, this has been going on for years. People act like this is something new, you know. It's not. It's not even close to being brand new. It's just when it finally happens to you, now it's an issue. Okay. You know, I'm not trying to repel anyone with that kind of discussion. You need to face reality. This is how tyranny is forged. When people say, "Please take my goddamn gun. I'm not safe." You know, take my katana. I don't know how to use it. Well, fucking learn how to use it. You know, learn the laws. Learn the precedents of those laws. Learn how to put two and two together instead of opting for tolerance classes. I mean, what's that for? Well, so I don't offend anyone. Hey, you're offending me. I don't care who else you're offending or not offending. You're offending me. Okay, because I've been put through some shit because of people like you. So, you know, in principle, my heart goes out to you, you know. But welcome to the fucking real world. How can you be so damn blind? And it's been going on for years. And I just, you know, 17 people get shot up. Well, we had no idea. It was... I don't know what to say to you guys, man. I really don't. But I hope this has been a wake-up call for you. If it hasn't, this is just going to happen some more, and it's not going to decrease. It's not going to stop. It's going to get worse. So, You need to think before you react, and you need to ask some serious questions about who was really involved with the conditions that led to what just happened, rather than just blaming the easiest thing that's within arm's reach. You know, this can't have a debate. It can't have a debate with you. It can't explain anything. It can't defend itself. Neither does it care to. It's essentially a brick with working parts. It has no intention. It has no will. It's not even an animal. You should ask yourself, who are the animals? Who are the ones who would do that? Educate yourself so that sort of stuff does not happen. And that's really what this video is about. I mean, you know, all kinds of people have